Hey, what's going on guys? So today we're going to run through a full penetration test using the Windows XP system that we set up earlier. So to start, let's actually check to see if the vulnerability is still active in that Windows machine. So we're going to use Nmap and we're going to call a script that looks at port 445 to see if the MS08067 hack or vulnerability is still there. So the command for this is sort of long, but at the very end we'll put in the IP of that Windows host that we set up. So it's going to be 192.168.56.103. Okay, so once you got that all typed in, it'll start checking, and what we have here is a readout that'll tell us whether or not it's vulnerable. In this case, it is still vulnerable because it is under that Service Pack 2, which was not patched to take out this issue in Windows XP. Now that that's all done, we can go ahead and start the attack. To do that, let's open up Metasploit. So if you type in MSF console, it'll open up Metasploit and we can start setting up the exploit and setting up the payload. So now that it's all up, we can go ahead and search for that vulnerability at the very start. And so it'll take a second for it to search for that particular vulnerability. Once it has it, we can set that exploit to our attack package. So now that it's up, you can see here that the path to that vulnerability is right here. And it ends in net API because that's what Microsoft originally called the vulnerability. To set the exploit, all we have to do is say use, and then we can copy the exploit path and paste it below, and that'll assign the exploit to our attack. Next, we can set the payload, and we're going to use Meterpreter as our as part of our package here, and this will help us. It'll give us some extra commands to use when we are accessing the Windows machine remotely. So to call that, you do set payload, and then you have Windows/Meterpreter, and then you have reverse TCP, which is our actual payload. So that's the code that will be running once we exploit the system. Alright? So now you can show options, and it shows us that we are missing a couple of things. We're missing the IPs for the host, for the remote host, and the local host. The remote host, that is the PC that we are attacking. So we can go ahead and assign that as set our host to that IP, to the IP of that Windows machine. That's going to be the 103 version. And then we can set the local host to our own IP that we're using for our Kali Linux, which will be 192.168.56, and I believe it's 100. Okay, once those are set, we have to do one more thing, and that's select our target. Because we know that we're using Service Pack 2 as part of our OS, we should go ahead and attack or target that when we're using our attack. So for me, that's going to be a target of 5. So I'm going to go ahead and set target to 5. Now the attack's all ready to go, and you can go ahead and run exploit. And it'll run the exploit, and boom, the interpreter's propped up, and we're in the other PC. To prove that, I can show you the path, and we're in a Windows system. So, Interpreter comes with a bunch of tools that you can use. We'll show those in a second. First, I want to hop into the Windows terminal for the XP machine. To do that, you have to run execute -f cmd.exe -I. And this will open up the terminal for our Windows machine so that we can modify some more things a little bit easier since we're already using the Windows terminal. For instance, we can back out of here and go to the desktop. So we have to go through our document settings. So if you knew the entire path to the desktop, you can go ahead and just type that in. Since we're infiltrating, I guess, another computer, I'm going to pretend we don't know what the users are and such, so we have to actually go through each step. So showing this, we have all of our users, one being Chris, and we know that because it was Chris's PC that we scanned earlier. So then cd into Chris, and the last step is going to the desktop. Oops, cd desktop. So at the moment, there should be nothing on the desktop. As you can see, there's no directories and there's 0 bytes on there. And if we go over to our Windows machine, nothing but the recycle bin is there. So what I want to do is I want to put a text file on that desktop that says you've been hacked. Now that we're on the desktop, what I want to do is place a file there. To make it easy, we'll just write a file that says you've been hacked, and we'll put that in a text file called hacked.txt. Alright, now let's go over to that Windows machine and check out what we did. And there it is. We have a hacked text file up on the desktop, and there's our message. So we're already communicating with the other PC, which is great. Let's close that up. But creating files is not the only thing we can do. There's also much more available once we hop back into the Meterpreter shell. So let's go ahead and exit out of our Windows terminal. Alright, and now we're back where we started. What's cool is that Meterpreter gives us a lot of tools to work with. Type in help or a question mark, it'll give you a full list of all of its commands. So it starts with all of the core system commands up at the top, such as help and some of the other basic functions about the Meterpreter session. You also have your file system commands that let you navigate through throughout the directories. But as we go lower, you'll get into more of the attack sort of tools. Things like key scanners. And you can see how this would be useful for a hacker since they can log keystrokes of credit card information, login information. You can also grab screenshots with Meterpreter so you can capture what you wouldn't be able to capture with the keylogger. And if we had a webcam set up, we'd also be able to see out of the webcam for our XP machine. The other cool one is a hash dump. And this is important when you're talking about the later steps of a hack. Things like elevating privileges. So if you need to use an administrator account instead of just a normal user account, then you need to know the password login for that account. This is how you do that. The hash dump gives you the hashes of the password logins for all the users on the system. So you could hash dump here. It would give you the level of user account. So administrator being the highest is 500. And then you have your other accounts below it. Off to the right, you'll have your username and password in a hash code. One reason to do this is that you can take the hashes and use online tools to match them with already known passwords and usernames. Since they're unique to a certain string, they're not hard to find if you have a large enough database. Okay. The other one we had was screenshots. Let's take a look at that. Awesome. So the screenshot is in our root directory, and we can take a look at that going to files, and now we have two, because I did one earlier, but there's our screenshot with our hacked file on the desktop. That's going to be it for this lab. If you wanted to run through this on your own, we're going to have a walkthrough in text that'll give you more details about what happens at each step, and of course we'll also put in the commands that we use for each part of the process.